So, welcome to the Musician, Technician, Entrepreneur podcast. My name's L.B. Odom.
Jeff Jaskowiak.
And today we're with Jeff Komar. Hello, Jeff.
How's it going?
Good.
Good.
I thought maybe a good place would start would be you could just kind of introduce yourself and what you do now, and then maybe we could unpack that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm Jeff. I'm a product specialist for Avid, and I have been so for, almost 18 years. So basically, I am part of the Pro Audio division of Avid, which would have previously been Digidesign. And I am essentially the in-between between the actual pure salespeople and the customer, and then product management. So we are essentially, helping to deploy solutions, helping to come up with solutions, helping to demonstrate gear, helping the channel, meaning the resellers, to sell the gear and to understand the technology so that they can sell it. So we're not really pure sales, but we enable the salespeople to really understand the applications and of the technology, and the workflow is really the key. Is, okay, you got all this cool tech. Well, you might not have the right piece depending on what are you trying to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what our group really assesses. We have a lot of technology, hardware and software, and we try to get the best fit for the customer, whether it's the kid in their basement messing around, writing tracks, making loops, or Warner Brothers, and literally everybody in between. So that's what we do.
And that takes you all over the world?
Yeah. I mean, I've been all over the world. I mean, I would say I spend the vast majority of my time in North America. Yeah. So, but I certainly get pulled into events and trade shows and things in Europe and in Asia and elsewhere. But I primarily spend my time in the States, and that's all over the States. So.
And just off the NAMM Show, right?
The NAMM Show, yeah. I just got back, so I'm still a little crispy. But, yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's a really cool environment because there's so many people that care about music and technology and music technology, right? There's all those people in between, right? There's people that are just horn players. And like, I know everything you can, about horns. Yeah. And they know nothing about technology, right? And then there's people that are complete geeks that know amazing things about audio and technology and everything in between, right? So it's a really neat, it's a cool place if you can deal with the high SPL, but and there's always always interesting new stuff to look at, and people to meet and such. But yeah.
Did you have a favorite this year?
Sorry?
Did you have a favorite?
Unfortunately, this year I didn't really get any time to walk around because we were so busy doing things on the main stage and then doing things at the booth with S6. And we had some really neat stuff this year, actually, not to go too deep into it, but we had Dolby. We're in the process. We have a relationship with Dolby that we started a couple years ago, and we're working on basically increasing the workflow with regard to Dolby Atmos, which is immersive audio in Pro Tools. And so we had a Halo, which is kind of like an array of, in this case, it's 12 speakers. But if you go to see, Star Wars or whatever in a nice Atmos theater, it could be up to 64 speakers. Oh, wow. So we usually we'll show, cinematic theatrical stuff. This year we're actually showing some music that was specifically mixed in Atmos, which is really interesting, right? Because you got lots of speakers to play with and lots of really creative things you can do. Yeah. So we had Dolby at our booth, and we were showing some of the upcoming technology. Oh. So I was wearing that hat and then also doing some demos on the main stage, and so I didn't see anything. I read about what's new, but had I gone to look at drums and percussion, I probably would have spent money, and that would have been bad, but that's okay. So
it's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm really curious where it all began for you. I know you're a drummer, so my guess is it started there, but...
Yeah. Well, it probably started the fact that my dad, when we were kids, my dad had a small studio. My dad was always playing, in bands and playing at home. And eventually, his interest in curiosity and recording, kind of evolved a little bit. And we always had a space. And then that space turned into, I want to play drums, which, I played violin before that when I was a kid in elementary school. And that's not super cool. So then, I played drums. My brother played keyboards and synthesizers. And so, so it actually having a space to actually put some instruments, some rock instruments up,
right,
and roll some, however small tape machines, and play with some new MIDI technology and synthesizers and drum machines, and it was pretty cool, right? We actually had a studio when we were kids, which was pretty neat. So it started there,
Pretty unique in that time frame. Too.
It is, I mean, we had an old school monochrome, luggable, super old, I think either 8086 or 286 or something, running, Voyatra Sequencer Gold, monochrome monitor, like a 4-inch monitor or something. But that was my first interaction with MIDI. It was like, this is really cool. You got sounds in this rack, and you're just triggering some data to figure out what key and what pitch and velocity. It was really interesting, right? And you're just putting ideas down, and you could do any kind of permutation, So that kind of coupled with electronic drums, rubber drums, acoustic drums, drum machines, there's a lot of neat things going on. So yeah, I was totally into all that, and as well as technology, computers and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm sure the seeds were planted, right? Is music and music technology. So.
And how old were you then at that?
I was in junior high. When that kind of started.
Pretty young.
Pretty young. Yeah. But computers were, like I said, that was the beginning of actually having, decent power in a home computer, and actually thinking about, applying that to, at that point, just MIDI, right? Because digital audio was really not, on a computer, was not there yet.
Right.
And then that, that evolved, obviously, and we started kind of looking at those things. But this was before actually recording to a hard drive. It was all MIDI at that point for me. So
that's why that one time when you were in high school and you said, Jeff, look at this. I've got a 1 gig drive. Meant so much. You could do so much more MIDI stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, compared to what you showed me tonight on the, that's a 2 terabyte, right?
Yeah, we were looking at a Glyph technology, which ironically, it's funny, we've kind of come full circle. In the early days, we did a lot with Glyph and, giant monolithic external ultra-wide SCSI, very expensive drives, right? Now we're looking at, they've got some really neat new drives that are incredibly portable and super high performance, that are, tiny, USB, they're USB-C, and they are, it's actually an SSD RAID. So, and, 800 megabytes per second transfer rate. I mean, pretty crazy stuff. Anyway, so yes, storage is basically free, very inexpensive, incredibly high performance. The whole concept, the whole concern about bandwidth and track count is gone, right? And that was a big deal. When I first started with Avid, Digi, in 2000, that was a big logistical thing to think about. How many tracks can I actually record or play back to this hard drive? That you actually had to work all that out, and sometimes span your sessions across multiple devices to get it to work. It just, and it was very expensive. So that's obviously completely changed for everybody. So
back in high school when, you were still kind of multitasking between developing your musicianship and, your technical skills on computer. Again, our clientele are, late high school, early college people, and they're all looking to say, okay, can I make a living in this world?
Sure.
So what were the things that kind of drew you to the next step, of, trying to become more excellent at both of those things?
Oh, geez. I mean, some of it's just kind of luck, right? It's just like I was just following my intrigue in digital audio, and I happened to be at the right time because it was just starting to become real, right? And I remember playing with early versions of Cubase and having I think, what did I have? I think I had some event cards and things like that, and just it was the beginning of just really actually doing some things with real-time plugins and digital audio that was starting to become real, and it was interesting, right? Just being able to do that. But I mean, we always had computers. Obviously, my dad was very involved with computers, so we always had computers. So the application of audio was just one more possibility. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's a combination of that computer world and the music world kind of colliding, and just the idea of what you could possibly do with this in the future. And the future's here, right? Now, every major album and film and everything is in the box.
Yeah.
Where when I started, that was not the case, right? It was.
In fact, that was like derogatory.
Absolutely. People were scared to death of that idea of, oh no, we've got to have console, we got to have tape machine, we got to have all this stuff. Otherwise, that's not a real album. That's not a real film.
Right.
Now, the vast majority of everything is done completely in the box. That's just a fact of life. So yeah, everything has changed dramatically.
So going back to late high school, going into college, where did you go to college, and what did you focus on there?
Oh, geez. I went to many different colleges.
No, that's good.
You don't know. And it's just funny because I'm thinking about these things now that my daughter is heading towards high school.
Yeah.
And thinking about, and she's a far better student than I was. But thinking about, just starting to ask the questions about what interests you, and what do you think you might want to study, and it's not everybody has that stuff right away accessible and ready to go when they're a junior in high school, like you're supposed to, right? So I certainly didn't, right? I mean, I started taking some classes at College DuPage and then ended up at Iowa State, and then realized I didn't really want to be an engineer, a double E essentially, and so I came back and started.
That was at Iowa State?
Yeah.
I didn't even know you went there.
I came back and started taking more artistic classes at Columbia College, which included film, including audio, film and audio, and various things. And then I finished there. And so I took plenty of math and physics and those types of things, enough to realize that I wanted to try something different. So, yeah.
So at Columbia, was your degree in more in film?
My degree was in film at
okay.
Columbia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So
did you do actually doing filming, or did you do the audio component of film?
all of the above. So I'm sure the curriculum has changed a little bit now, but you kind of straddled the film and the audio department. There was audio for visual mediums and specific audio classes and doing location recording and stuff like that. At that time, using the Nagra, and but then there was cinematography classes and there was lighting classes and there was, aesthetics and all that. So I took a lot of film classes, but I took a fair amount of audio classes too. So so that it was very certainly very different than where I started college. But I enjoyed it. It was good.
So again, like our students are going to be in the same boat as that. You know, when they, again, our idea of is get as much understanding of being a great musician, a great technician, and then be thinking about the business part,
Sure.
too, with the entrepreneur and developing those sorts of things. So that's still a big leap from Avid. For how did you then get from that high school, that college degree, to that next place where Avid had their eye on you?
Yeah. So essentially, I had many different jobs during school and after school. I actually worked at a place called Facets, which was this really interesting place in the city that distributed and had an unbelievable supply of films, including art films and really hard to find films. I think the owner is actually Polish, if I remember correctly, and they hosted film festivals and all this crazy stuff. Anyway, I also worked at Guitar Center, which it's hysterical how many people that I work with or I'm connected to have at some point in their life or career worked at Guitar Center, right?
Yeah.
So I worked at Guitar Center in the Pro Audio and Keyboards department, right? And sold audio recording software and microphones and all that kind of thing. And then eventually ended up at Full Compass in Madison. And it was really because I knew a lot about, and it was still pretty new, about digital audio workstations. And that was kind of like, okay, there's obviously these physical ADATs and D88s, right? And then there's the initial early Pro Tools and Cubase and
Session 8.
And Session 8 and what was the Paris? Remember Paris?
Yeah.
These things, right? And I was actually one of the people that really knew a lot about these. And then, ultimately we started providing integrated turnkey digital audio workstations. And I kind of led that department at Full Compass. And so that's kind of, and now, and then obviously because of that, we started selling a good number of Pro Tools based workstations. And then hysterically, I'm not going to say his name, but one of the guys that was the rep that came into Full Compass to talk about Pro Tool, I knew twice or three times what he knew about the product. And at some point, his boss realized that, and at some point, they offered me a job.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, obviously, I was in the right place at the right time. Pro Tools was starting to become real, meaning people were starting to take it seriously and realizing that this was going to be a thing. Where before that, it was kind of like, is this going to stick?
It was one of a bunch.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
Now, for you to have that knowledge, though, you weren't just reading the manual. I mean,
No.
you must have been. Were you doing sessions?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I am and was a drummer and was connected with several different musicians working on projects. And, for a while, I actually had some friends. I lived there for a bit, but there was a loft off of right by Union Station off of Jefferson in Van Buren, downtown Chicago, and I had a good friend that we connected with and had a band and we're recording stuff, and it was like, okay, how do we do this? Well, there's all kinds of cool new technology. Let's try it. So that's, it's necessity is the mother of it. It's if you have to figure it out, you will, right? And he was always about monolithic. He was always about, well, we could do D88s or we could use VS880s or, it was always a physical box. I'm like, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You can put A and B and C together, and it's better than the VS880 or the D88. And he's like, oh, okay. So I'm like, people.
So those initial starts with recording, you already were leaning towards getting it into the computer.
Oh yeah, because I could see
Yeah.
the potential. Because
Yeah.
you capture something, into PCM, and you've got infinite possibilities. I mean, obviously back then, you didn't have the crazy host power that we do now. But I remember, some of the early like convolution stuff from, Sonic Foundry. And things is like you'd have to render it right before you heard your
Could hear it.
IR that you applied, which fine, but it was like, wow, this has got huge potential, right? Because you can spend as much time as you want on the assets, the audio, the MIDI. Once you capture it, you can do anything with it. And yes, computers were not terribly fast, and so you had to manage your resources. But there was tons of possibilities. I could see that it was going to go crazy. So. Yeah, I was kind of addicted to the technology, I guess.
And you weren't afraid of it.
No,
a
I
lot-
wasn't.
a lot
And I
of
wasn't.
people were
I wasn't
afraid
afraid of it because
Yeah.
there was always computers around our house, and I was, it was to me. It was just. I was familiar with Photoshop. I was familiar with Word. I was familiar with many other applications. It was just the audio part of that. It's the same exact idea. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. We'll just once you digitize this thing, be it an image, be it a piece of sound. Now you've got all these possibilities.
Yeah.
I understood that.
Yeah.
And now we take it for granted, right?
Right.
So you grew up in the PC world, though, right? Pretty much.
I grew up completely in the PC world.
Yeah.
And then I joined a company that was completely Mac. So, yeah, until like late 90s, I grew up in the PC world, absolutely. Yeah.
And so because of that, you weren't afraid to build computers, tackle computers, rewrite things, and just
Right.
tear them
No.
apart. And that
Yeah.
gave you some swashbucklingness with the computer
Sure.
programming in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
because I remember you basically I bought my first Pro Tools system from Jeff.
Yeah.
When he was at Full Compass.
Sure.
And he put it together, but it was a PC version. Yeah. And because and the only reason I went there was because he knew it, and our other consultant Bill knew it, and so I didn't know anybody that knew how to deal with Macs.
Yeah.
And they were very expensive.
Sure. So. Yeah. And I mean, even to this day, I will say, there's been an evangelism about Apple, and it's obviously Apple's very different from when I first started using Apple stuff, but it doesn't matter whether it's a Mac or PC, honestly. It all comes down to the parts that you source and buying quality stuff, putting it together, following spec. If you put together a really, really good qualified machine, Mac or PC, it's going to work, right? Mm-hmm. If you choose bad components, you're going to have trouble. Mm-hmm. So,
So then, when you started working for, for a time you worked for Full Compass, putting turnkey packages together, and then
correct turnkey DAWs, yeah.
Yeah, and then you pivoted to Avid. Then what was it like being with Avid those first 5 years? What kind of things did you do for them then?
Well. That was the beginning. It was Digidesign, early Digidesign for me, early 2000s, and that was the explosion of the DAW, right? Mm. That was 2002, if I'm correct, was when Pro Tools HD hit, and then Pro Tools LE and all those things, Digi-001. That was the explosion of how Digidesign, ruined the professional studio. Good or bad, right? That was the beginning of all that. It really was. When people started to realize that Pro Tools is real, and it's not just a tape machine, it's a lot more than that. It's the record, edit, mix, everything. Mm. And like I said, now it's there. Everything is done that way. So, yeah, I mean, that early 2000 was huge. I mean, that was so important for the evolution of the technology and people taking it seriously and actually being able to use it, and then the concept of plugins, that was then too, right? Obviously now the plugins are everywhere, and I think today there's over 3,000 plugins for Pro Tools 12. I mean, it's insane, right? Back then it was, Waves. There was some Wave stuff that was early. Some early TC, some early Focusrite. There was a handful. Waves was the original development partner for Digidesign. So there was a very small number of plugins, and then this concept of an open ecosystem. And it was interesting because it was, oh wow, I can buy this plugin that's kind of like a finalizer that I can plug in and I can add it to my system, and wow, I can actually do some mastering and blah blah blah.
Right.
But it was a really interesting idea. Well, okay, I like the EQ that's built in, but I can buy a different one, and I can use the DSP or whatever with somebody else's algorithm. And now, look at what's happened. That's exploded, right? Plugins are everywhere, and they're used for studio, for live, for video editing workstations, for everything, right? They're everywhere. So it's neat to see that power. And to see all the thriving developers.
So just because of who you were and your temperament and your skill sets, it made you just like ripe for taking on this new protocol, like for digital audio. And so I guess what I'm trying to say for students is to have their eyes open for looking for things, because you didn't start, you got your degree and bam, you're all of a sudden working for a super high end.
And his degree in something totally different.
Totally
really.
different. Yeah.
Well, yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, it's just try to keep their options. Like again for myself, I spend a lot of time after college composing and writing, but then there was an element of sales in there too.
Sure.
That kind of those are things that kind of pivot and kind of form, who you end up being.
True. Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, it's always following, curiosity and following interesting trends, and obviously, I had the opportunity that came up in I could kind of see that this was going to be something, and it was something that I was interested in because it was applicable to what I was doing, and I was interested in synthesis. I was interested in drum machines. I was interested in computers. I was interested in digital audio recording. I was interested in signal processing, right? All these things.
Yeah.
And this had the potential to give people the opportunity to do that anywhere. And that's kind of what it became. So, I just, yeah.
So did you make a movie or be a part in it? Did you
Make a movie?
like after college, did you go make a movie or help someone make a movie?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I worked on many.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I worked on, yeah. It's a terrible experience. Everybody that thinks they want to be in the film industry should make a movie, or should go, work the craft service table on an independent film and realize how insanely monotonous and hardworking it takes to make a movie. It is not glamorous. It's terrible. You have to absolutely love, and I would say the same thing about music, working on an album.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the finished product and the sweat and blood and everything that goes into it. It's great. But especially even film more so than that, it is a real effort.
Yeah.
You have to love it because you're not going to last otherwise, because it's a tremendous amount of work. So it's a great experience. I mean, everybody should intern, should try things and give up their time for free. I mean, it's great if you can get paid, but a lot of times I didn't get paid for many of the things I did. You just try to take you try things, and oftentimes you don't get paid for it. Mm-hmm. And I worked on many, independent films just to see, okay, what's this like? And it's a great learning experience. And if you connect with it, great. But you might realize really quick that I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I would say take as many opportunities as possible. Try things, right? Even if they're not even directly related to what you think your focus or major is, because you might realize, well, I'm a couple degrees away from what I actually really want to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
But some of those things probably. I mean, I am always amazed at your not only your audio skill sets, but your post production and video, understanding. I'm sure some of that had to come from working, on those projects or working with people regularly, because especially in its current applications and and Pro Tools.
Yeah. I mean, the reality is all the tools are related. I mean, so in college and before that, I was always interested in photography, right? And so same exact, totally analogous, right? Everybody now has a digital camera, if not connected to your phone, a DSLR. And what can you do with that? Well, you can do anything, right? And when I was a kid, that was not the case, right? You had an analog camera. You took the film, you processed the film. If you were really cool, you had a lab in your house, and you did, you had a dark room. And my dad was really into photography as well. Anyway, it's exactly the same thing. It's the same technological. But I guess the point being, I was always interested in photography, and from photography comes, motion, and then the edit, whether you're cutting video or you're cutting audio, and I've been told this, interestingly, by dialogue editors, that most dialogue editors on film, or not most of them, but a lot of them are drummers or percussionists, because there's absolutely a rhythm to the way that you cut, right? And it's not like you're always cutting on an eighth note or a 16th note, but there's a feel to the way the pacing of the phrases in the film. And so many people that are in, that cut dialogue are actually percussionists or drummers.
Oh, that's wild.
Because of that concept of rhythm, right? And hysterically, when I was a kid, I remember being around the table with my grandfather, and I'm one of those people that's always tapping, right? Because I'm a drummer. And he'd be like, Jeff, do you have a lot of anxiety? I really don't. I'm really fine. I'm at peace. Yeah. But I hear a rhythm and I tap it out. And I've been around other drummers and they do the exact same thing. Yeah. It just is, right?
My grandma used to say, "Stop that." I could just be like,
I know. Yeah. Some people, it completely freaks them out. But anyway, I will never forget that. It's so funny. I'm like, I have to tap. Anyway, so the point being, whether you're cutting a film, whether you're, cutting video, or you're cutting audio for music or for post-production, whatever, it's the same thing. I mean, right? There's a concept of the aesthetic. There's a concept of the rhythm. They're very similar, actually.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So a lot of these tools are very related, absolutely. So
then how did your position in Digidesign / Avid kind of morph and change over those last, 15 years or so?
Well, I mean, I've kind of followed the technology that's interested me, which means I've been a member of a small group of guys that has kind of been very involved with control surfaces. So that's a whole nother bucket of, of evolution, right? If you look at the beginning of what we talked about, okay, Pro Tools is replacing a tape machine, right? Okay, cool. Then Pro Tools is replacing maybe some of the EQs and signal processing. But for a long time, there was this concept where we can't mix in the box. We have to have external mixing, external summing, an external physical mixer, right? Well, late 90s, we released a control surface, which was Pro Control, right? And then people are like, it's a fad, not gonna last, right? Seriously. Now, where are we? Well, you have a virtual control surface that is communicating back to a digital audio engine. Whether the engine's DSP based or native, it doesn't matter. Whatever, who cares, right? It's a control surface, and so that technology has evolved. And so I've kind of always been in a small group of guys at Avid that were very involved in control surfaces. So back then it would have been Icon, D-Control, D-Command, and now it's basically our flagship is S6. So I'm one of a couple of people that are really involved in S6. And that's just, the old stuff on steroids. Same ideas taken further. And they're all over now in terms of, a lot of the big film re-recording stages like Sony and Warner Brothers and Technicolor are using this technology because of the capabilities. So, yeah, I think again I've followed and focused on and dug into things that are interesting to me, and so I've followed the control surface technology, and again now that has become a reality which it was not back in the Icon days. That was not taken seriously. They would pre-dub, or they do small films or TV shows on Icon. And pre-dub is basically get all the the source elements ready to actually put on the stage to mix with a real console, which is maybe a DFC or a Harrison, something like that, right? Now, it's all being done virtually. It's all being done with a massive control surface like S6, with Pro Tools HDX. So again, we've seen this a little bit further, right? You can't do it without a Harrison. Well, not true. Now we're seeing, oh wow, they're mixing gigantic films. Like, was it Mad Max Fury Road? I think won a whole bunch of Oscars for sound, and it's an amazing sounding film, and it was done all in that environment.
Yeah.
And the benefits are, you have just more flexibility, more capabilities. You can control multiple machines simultaneously. You can use the same automation and the same plugins and things you're used to using in the box, in editorial. And guys are like, oh, I get it, okay,
Right.
So that's another kind of like inching forward with the technologies, the control surface as the front end for the mixer to feel comfortable, to feel like he's on a large console, which, he is. But behind the scenes is Pro Tools and the mixer engine of Pro Tools. So, it's pretty cool.
So that was the kind of the thing that gelled those years, is your interest in that, and because of that, you're kind of in the forefront of being able to demonstrate those sorts of things, and they lean on you for for doing conventions and all that sort of stuff.
That's how I ended up in South Korea, was demoing D-Control Icon to some folks. Yeah. So yeah, again, it was something that I was very curious about, and I was one of a few people that were, specializing in those high-end control surfaces. And again, it was exactly the same curiosity as when I began with the DAW. Like, this might be possible, right? Can we do this? Can this replace a giant console? And it did, and it does. So it's like, okay, what's the next thing?
That's what we were going to ask.
Yeah. I don't know what the next thing is.
Any predictions for the future of digital
neural
recording?
uplink? I don't know. Yeah.
Where do we go from here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, I guess part of me thinks new ways to manipulate, new ways to interact with the interface, right? Even though we have control surfaces, we still have trackballs and QWERTY keyboards and things like that. And I don't know, just different paradigms, to maybe manipulate this stuff. And I do think that Atmos is an interesting thing, and we're starting to talk about VR, and Atmos is about more speakers and dynamic audio and moving things around. And so I think some of these new technologies are going to give us more possibilities. I do, so but man, there's the tool set in just the capabilities and the fidelity and the creativity that you have right now is just unbelievable. I mean, It really is. I mean, there's nothing, there's no impediment. There isn't. There's no argument that you can do anything. It's true. I mean,
there's no excuses anymore.
There's zero. Zero. I mean, it's not storage. It's not computer processing speed. It's not the fidelity of sample libraries. It's not the virtual instruments. It's not the models of classic and new and unknown analog equipment. There's no limitations anymore. You can do anything. The only limitation is you. Mm-hmm. It's just true. Mm-hmm. So, anyway.
So how do you keep up to speed on, not only just your own growth as a musician and all the tools that are available, both for the mixing world, but also for all the elements that you have to do with, like, for an S6. Do you have set times of your life where you say, I'm just going to take a week and go into the cave and just study and work again?
Yeah.
I mean,
for something like S6, you have to have a lab, meaning you have to have one set up and you have to be able to spend time digging into it because it's so deep and it's such an erector set, meaning it's not just a control surface that you plug in. It's actually an array, a matrix of multiple network devices, and it can be configured in many different ways. It's this giant, network. And then the possibilities about customization and how are you controlling workstations, and you have to have a lab and you have to spend time digging into it.
And you would, Avid requires you to do that, right?
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, certainly Avid needs people to be able to be versed in this technology. I mean, we have now over 1,300 S6s that we've deployed worldwide.
Oh,
wow.
And again, many of them, some of those, a lot of those are in very, very high-profile environments. Again, the Technicolors and the Skywalker sounds and places like that you have to be able to speak that language. And so you have to know. I mean, I would say that is the definition of the gig, of the product specialist gig, is knowing more than the customer and the salesperson, and knowing, having that library of data that you can apply when there's a problem, because there's always going to be a problem, right? And it's not about necessarily a fault, but it's about a workflow, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I want to do this. I can't, it's not working, right? How do you make that work? So it's not necessarily the gear doesn't work. It's about how do you optimize the technology for whatever they're doing, right?
And you're working with, when you say customer, you're talking about guys that are mixing film and have been mixing film for a long time, and they're just embracing the S6 technology and going, I
Right.
want it to do this. How do I get it to do
Sure.
that?
Yeah. Some of those customers, came from, again, old school Harrison, but some of them also came from like System 5 DSP console, which is ours, which came from Euphonics, and Avid acquired Euphonics. And some of those customers came from Icon, D-Control, right? And so you've got all these different paths of these guys that are good mixers, but they've used different stuff, and now they're ending up on S6. And it's like, okay, just help me to change my mind a little bit to figure out how to apply. I know how to mix. Just show me how to do it on this. Okay, where are the filters? Where's my threshold? How do I get to my groups? That's really what it is, right? Translating the knowledge of, I used this, I'm comfortable with this, make them comfortable on this new technology. So,
Do you have any input on the products that come out, like the design and the?
yeah, we have some input. I mean, we certainly funnel back tons and tons of, this is good, this is bad, this could be better, please do this, blah, blah, blah. Absolutely.
And from probably what the customers are
Sure.
requesting.
Us, our opinions, the customer's opinions, certainly if something's on fire, meaning it's, just, there's a real problem here you guys overlooked. You know what I mean? That always,
Right.
those things always happen. But yeah, definitely we try to be as involved as we can.
So that's interesting. Now, that makes a lot more sense. When we were talking earlier today, you were saying, how you like working with Machine and some of those other controllers. It makes more sense to me. It's just after your love for the
You like
S6,
controllers, yeah.
but using some other controllers like the Machine, you're actually being musical.
Oh, yeah.
And creating music
Yeah.
using a controller, as
Yeah,
opposed to mixing or editing with
Right.
controllers.
Yeah, I like, and we were talking about this earlier, but I mean, I've always liked hardware, so that's one thing. And then I always like something that makes you solve a problem in a different way, right? And we were talking about push, and we were talking about machine, and all that. And you can do similar things in multiple DAWs, but the point is that it changes your mind a little bit to solve the problem in a slightly different way. And I think that's why I would encourage people to learn every DAW and learn every hardware controller.
Yeah.
Because it really does affect the way you approach the problem, right? Learn
Yeah.
push, learn Machina, use Cubase, use Pro Tools, use Logic, use Reason, use everything. Because it will affect how you solve problems when you're in whatever your tool you're using. I mean, obviously, we only have so much time, and at some point you have to be confident with a certain tool set to use it to get the job done. Otherwise, you get fired. But you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
explore as many things as you can, because they're all amazing for what they do. So yeah.
So you must really still love learning, and I mean, does a product ever come out and you just go, oh gosh, I don't want to have to learn this?
Well, if it's outside of my zone of interest,
Yeah.
maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when it ticks the boxes of audio and creativity and connectivity, and when it's in your wheelhouse, you're interested in it. When it's
Right.
slightly outside of that, you're kind of like,
Right.
yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It's just everybody's like that. It's
Sure.
whatever you are interested in, you spend the most time on. And for me, it's always been audio and MIDI, and certainly if there's a rhythmic or a percussive or a drum element. And then I've always been about manipulation, right? Which is maybe mangling things. And,
Yeah.
if you go back to the Brian Enos and Floods and guys like that
Yeah.
just destroy things and then realize that they've made things, right? It's really interesting. And because you do something and you're like, and a happy accidents, right? We talk about this, but if you always follow the same process, you're never going to make anything new or weird, right?
Right.
The weirder, the better. Use a plugin that you would never use,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, well, I would never do that. Well, then do it. Because then it's like, oh, okay. Then it takes you down a path you didn't expect. It's totally true, though. You
Yeah.
force yourself to make a weird decision. And I have that, I can't remember the name of it right now. What is it called? I'm going to forget the name of it. Oblique strategies, right? Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, the
I
Eno
have the
thing.
little
Yeah.
card pack.
Oh, you have the
I
cards?
pull it out from time to
Yeah.
time, right? That Brian Eno put together.
Uh-huh.
And it's totally cool because it's just like, it's problem solving. Think about the problem in a completely different way.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, that's stupid, that's absurd. Well, sometimes you need stupid. You need to like completely change. Because if you take the safe route. So I put this on the kick drum last time. I use this plate reverb. I use this bus. I'm going to blah. I'm going to compress that. It's going to sound exactly the same
Right.
or very similar because you did it, and it's going to be fine, but it's going to be the same,
Yeah,
right?
Same.
So you have to try weird things.
Yeah.
I'm totally I totally believe that now. That every once in a while you just really need to take yourself out of your own comfort zone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
So that must be why you're excited about that new gift you got then, huh? That you mentioned to us.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. I mean, I've got. I like to manipulate things, and I'll record some percussion, drums, whatever, and that'll be, maybe it's a loop, maybe it's a kick, maybe it's whatever, and then that'll come in and, maybe that'll go through a stomp box or Sans amp, and then maybe that'll go, you mess with it with plugins in the box, and then we were talking about the Moog, and I've got that hooked up to process input audio, right? Just to throw things through it and filter it and manipulate it. Yeah, I think
So you're using it not only as a
sound source,
Yeah.
but also as an input source
that's fun.
to filter and mangle things through it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah.
That was one of my, that was what I was certainly attracted to. So yeah, totally. Yep. So again, just try things and patch things you wouldn't normally patch. And if you're doing stuff in the outboard world too, then you just set up weird chains of things that you wouldn't normally do, right? And then things happen.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a fun. It's an experiment, right? Sonically, and then occasionally you find things like you would have never just like what you would have never come up with. I think that's the cool thing. That's when you find those combinations. So
what advice would you give some young people that are thinking of making their career in audio, whether it's they're being an artist or whether they're being an engineer or they're, trying to be in the industry in some way? What kind of things would you say that they need to really think hard about?
if you're gonna be, and I'm probably gonna steal somebody's credit for saying this, but if you're gonna be in audio, then you need to think about do everything you can in audio. And I guess what I mean by that is, if you love audio, you love audio. Meaning, you go around with a location recorder and you capture audio in airports, and you think about the audio when you're watching a film, and you think about the snare drum when you're listening to an album. And it's not just music, right? Audio is everywhere, right? So this idea of that you're always thinking about sound. And I don't capture audio every day, but I take a location recorder with me all the time, and I capture stuff, right? And the way I think about movies and film and dialogue and stuff like that, it's musical, right? And the way I listen to it's audio is not just, okay, I'm going to go into post, or I know what I'm going to do. Well, you should never narrow your field that much, right? Explore as many different possible connected things to audio as you can, right? Location audio for sound and post-production and doing voiceovers and making a record and everything, right? As many different possible things as you can, because it's only going to help you with whatever you end up doing. So you have to wear as many hats as you can. You have to know how to record. You have to know how to mix. You have to know how to edit. You have to know how to do everything that you can possibly know. And then, again, it's just this, there's all the technical stuff, and then there's the aesthetic part of it. again, which is only by listening to sound that you can get better at it. Again, right? You capture your own stuff, even if it's just some goofy crickets or conversations or whatever. You're constantly listening to sound, and that could be an ensemble, that could be a percussion, that could be crickets, that could be the sound of a train, and it's just this concept of sound, right? So that's what I would say.
That's great.
That's a good place to end.
Yeah, I would say. Thank you. It
Sure.
was tremendous bit of wisdom there, and we'll hear some more tonight at the clinic. So,
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. The Musician Technician Entrepreneur Podcast is sponsored by the Digital Audio Recording Arts program at the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois, preparing young students who are passionate about music to succeed in the music industry, offering a Bachelor's of Science degree in Digital Audio Recording Arts with a concentration in recording artist, audio engineering, or music business. Go to darausf.com for more information. DARAUSF.